What's that?
I'm just looking at the car we're reviewing today, Dan. It's the Mazda CX-5.
No, it isn't. It's a CX-9.
No, it's not. It's skinny. It's clearly a CX-5.
It's long and it's tall. It's clearly a CX-9.
What is it? Dan, we are of course driving the Mazda CX-8, which is the latest SUV in Mazda Australia's lineup to get a bit of an update. But what exactly is a CX-8? That's the question I want you to answer.
Well, it's a good question. So this car represents the flagship for the Mazda range in Japan. They don't get the CX-9 there because obviously that's just a little bit too big. So what this is a slightly sort of slimmed down version.
Oh, so this is the biggest car you can buy in Japan.
Effectively, it's the flagship, yes, but because Mazda Australia looked at it and thought, well, it's available right-hand drive, why don't we give it a go? And it's actually doing quite well, isn't it?
It is. They're almost selling as many of these as they are of the CX-9.
That is good.
Which is surprising for me because logically I've always thought that this car kind of existed in a no man's land between CX-5 and CX-9. I was like, just buy one of the other two.
Well, it kind of is. Because compared with the CX-9, this is a little bit shorter, it's a little bit narrower, and it's a little bit shorter that way as well. Yep. But compared with the CX-5, it's longer, it's a little bit taller, and its wheelbase is slightly longer. But critically, it has exactly the same width as the CX-5, but it has the same wheelbase as the CX-9.
Ah, right, okay. So it's like a Goldilocks positioning of those two cars, and it's for families looking for 3 rows of seats, but they don't want the big bulk of a CX-9 maybe.
Essentially, yes, it's sort of like a slender, slimmed down version of the CX-9, which obviously you want in Japan because they have those tiny little narrow streets that would be difficult to negotiate in a huge SUV.
Right, so there are some advantages to this car, but one big disadvantage for me at least, straight off the bat, is the way it looks. I don't know, there's something about it that's a bit awkward. A CX-9 is a really nicely proportioned, elegant SUV, but this one looks like a CX-5 that's had a awkward teenager growth spurt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, look, I have to say, I agree. The CX-5, both the CX-5 and the CX-9 are nicer looking than this car. But my argument to that is, if you're after a truly beautiful car, you're kind of ruling yourself out of all SUVs.
True, but that doesn't mean an SUV can't be good looking. And I think both the CX-5 and especially the CX-9, to my eyes anyway, are nice and elegant, very comfortable in their own skins, whereas this car just isn't to me.
I feel like you're being a bit mean. But anyway, there's far more to it than that.
They have, because they have updated this car across the range. So what's new exactly?
So this car, when it launched, was only available with a 2.2 litre turbo diesel. You can
Which is the car we're driving today.
Yes, coupled with all-wheel drive, but now you can get a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol, which is front-wheel drive only.
And this is one of the new variants. What is it?
It is the LE, which means you get all of this lovely Napa leather throughout, which extends to a very special thing in the second row back there.
Yeah, right, because there's only 2 seats back there.
Yes.
The third seat is taken up by some kind of center console.
Yes, what we're looking at here, Alex, are captain's chairs. They've already done it to the CX-9, you can get an LE version with those, and now they've also extended it to the CX-8 as well.
Okay, well I reckon I want to investigate that second row a bit more, and I want you to tell me exactly what a captain's chair is. So let's pull over and have a look.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Oh no.
Before we get back there though, Alex, let's examine some of the things you get in the Asahi LE up in the front row, because there's quite a lot to look at, isn't there?
Heated steering wheel, which Melbourne winter, love that. Heated and cooled seats, plus beautiful dial pack up here, wonderfully designed, easy to read, and this new screen, 10.25 inches, where the lower spec cars in the CX-8 range get an 8-inch screen.
Yeah, that complements that beautiful digital dial pack over there, as you mentioned before, and it's that lovely letterbox proportion as well.
And Mazda has finally fixed the resolution on its screens, and in particular its reversing camera, which used to look like it was shot on a potato, but now you can actually use it.
This one also gets a front camera as well, so you get the full 360 degree. Lovely.
There is one thing that I do not like about this screen though. It's not a touch screen.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it's within reaching distance, so it kind of teases you into thinking that it is. And it's really annoying when you're using something like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, where you've got to resort to the iDrive dial to get through to putting a destination in a nav and that kind of thing.
Let's spare a thought for all those people who don't have your ape arms for a moment and can't reach that screen. I personally don't have a big problem with it not being touchscreen, because when you're going over bumps and things, your arm starts to, you know what I mean?
Is that how you drive?
No, I was just off-road for a minute then. I was finding some all-terrain, it's all drive. So I don't mind that. I think it's totally okay just to use the control down here.
Okay, my other chief criticism of up here is there's actually not that much room to put things, especially this little cubby in front of the gear shifter, which is really annoyingly shaped. It's really narrow, and when you've got the gear stick in park, trying to get, I just lose my mind. I get so frustrated so quickly. And this center bin isn't actually that large, and at least the door bins are nice and big, but you don't actually put that much stuff down there, so it gets a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, of course, if we were in the CX-9, there would be a lot more space. There'd be more width here. It's probably a little bit deeper in that center console. Probably even translates a bit more storage capacity in the door pockets as well. My main bugbear is a small one. And it's, why is the heated steering wheel switch over on my side?
Where I've got a blank on this side.
It's not as if this would be left-hand drive in Japan, it's main market, so don't understand that one.
Speaking of things I don't understand, captain's chairs.
All right.
Come on, explain them to me.
Let's go. Welcome, Alex, to the business class lounge in the CX-8.
So I get some pajamas and...
you might get an in-flight bag of peanuts or a mint or something.
That's good.
So these are the captain's chairs we were talking about before. So rather than a 3-seat second row, we get just 2 and some added luxury. Those things include a nice big center console that incorporates more storage, way bigger than the front seat storage. We've got a little slide-out tray down here. We've got more heated and cooled seats, big cup holder, and these plush seats that we're sitting on. They're electrically adjustable.
They are, but first impressions are they're quite high set, so I don't feel like I have that much.
Well, here's your solution, obviously.
Recline.
Look at all this headroom now.
I'm going to need some more convincing because, they are electrically adjustable fore and aft, but I just prefer a normal CX-8 second row, which you just pull a lever and it's done in half the time.
Because you do get that with some of the higher spec ones, don't you? You also get your own climate panel in some higher spec versions. That's not unique to the LE. And the same goes for the Napa leather. So really what we're looking at is for about a $3,000 premium, you've got these 2 very showy seats.
Yeah, but you're missing a seat. That's the thing that I can't compute with. So I would like the extra luxury of these beautiful leather seats if this also somehow flipped up and I still had the flexibility of a 3rd seat.
Or what if it sort of flipped forwards and you could access the 3rd row a bit easier through this gap, but you can't, can you? You kind of still have to do the jump over.
Compromise either way. And I don't know. People buying these cars, they're families, surely. So you'd want as many seats as you can get, right?
And access should be as easy as possible. And it's not, is it? Because the way you get to that 3rd row is really convoluted and takes ages. It's not at all as easy as some other competitors.
No, speaking of that, we should go and have a look at it in a sec. But one extra thing you do get, window blinds,
and
which is good.
You get more lovely Bose speakers down here. This one gets the top spec sound system as well.
It's a lovely place to sit, don't get me wrong. I'm just still a little bit confused about the benefits of this captain's chair setup.
I am too. Who are you going to buy this car for, and who do you like enough to sit back in this really plush second row?
Let's check out the 3rd row, because that's usually a place you put people that you don't actually like that much. So let's get in there.
All right, begrudgingly, okay.
All right, the rear seat itself, though, is actually not bad. Sometimes these can be kid-only rows, but adults can fit back there.
Totally, it's surprisingly good. I would say it's acceptable and passable. A couple nice little touches, like you do get 2.5 amp charging sockets back here, so that if you do hate the experience, you can distract yourself with a device back here and it's not going to run out of battery. Yeah, actually surprisingly good.
It's kind of a space where an adult would be happy to be back there for, half an hour or so, but maybe not Melbourne to Sydney.
No, certainly not.
But let's talk about the boot space, because family car, the size of the boot is very, very important. And again, it's pretty good. With the 3rd row up, like we have it now, you get about 209 litres of luggage space, I think. And when you pop the 3rd row down, which is easy and speedy because it's a lever, not an electric motor.
Yes, yes.
We get 742 litres of luggage space.
That's so decent. Again, and also another 33 litres under the boot floor there, which is good for boosting overall volume, but also good for hiding valuable items out of sight.
But there's another compromise of choosing the
There
captain's
is.
chairs, isn't there?
There is. Where you'd normally get in any other variant about 1,740 litres by folding the second row down as well, in here you can't do it. The captain's chairs stay there kind of in the way. You can just fold them forward a little bit out of the way, but otherwise you don't get that flat floor that you would in any other CX-8.
That's right. And of course there is a compromise going CX-8, narrow body compared with the CX-9. When you have the third row up, you get about 20 litres less luggage space. And when you have the third row down, it's about 70 litres less luggage room than you get in a CX-9. So you are feeling that little bit less space in this car.
It is practically compromised. But anyway, that's enough about all the stuff at the back end. Let's get back up the front end.
I want to see what it's like to drive.
Done.
Okay, we've got some corners coming up now, and it's important because Mazda prides itself on building cars for people that enjoy driving, so...
I am enjoying myself.
You are?
Confirmed.
Yeah, it's good. I quite like the steering.
Do you? I find
do.
it just a little bit vague at times.
Yeah, right, okay. I don't mind the weighting. I think it's reassuring, gives you a bit of confidence that you know, you're getting the appropriate amount of grip and turn that you are asking of the car, which is not bad for a big, tall family bus.
I don't know if it's the geometry or something that's changed because, of course, we've got a car that's slightly narrower, but
Yeah.
it feels a little bit like it might topple at some point. It doesn't have quite the sure-footedness of the CX-9.
From an engineering perspective, it's kind of the worst of both worlds between a CX-5 and a CX-9, isn't it, in terms of dynamics?
I suppose so. Yeah, but I mean, are we talking about a slightly erroneous element of this car? I mean, are people going to drive this particularly enthusiastically? Is it more about the cruise and the comfort side?
Yes, you are absolutely right. But it is nice to know that it's not an awful thing to drive when you get a windy road. But when, you know, you're covering great distances, it is supremely comfortable in here. And we're on, you know, a typical Aussie back road now. The cabin is nice and quiet. It's comfortable in here.
It's actually, we were talking about coarse surfaces before, and this isn't the smoothest. It's pretty decent.
So we have the 2.2 litre diesel, and I would take this over the petrol that's also offered in the CX-8.
Absolutely. Unless budget is absolutely king, then you spend a little bit more money and go for the 2.2 diesel because it is so much stronger, so much more fuel efficient. It's not particularly noisy, delivers power and torque in a really lovely manner, and it's 450 newton meters of torque. It's seriously grunty for a 2.2.
Yeah, that's right. So the petrol and the diesel in the CX-8 both make the same power, 140 kilowatts. But the petrol only makes 252, I think, newton meters, whereas this makes 450 odd, so huge step up in torque.
It's coupled to a 6-speed automatic gearbox, which I think behaves almost a bit like a DCT. So if you watch the tachometer when I change gears, it's super snappy. Like it's, I don't know, it's much more lively and has a sense of urgency I wasn't expecting out of this gearbox.
Yeah, perhaps the best compliment I can pay the gearbox is I kind of forget about it. You don't think, oh, what ratio is it in? Or sometimes Mazda has an unfortunate tendency of hanging on to a lower gear for longer than it needs to, and it sort of revs out and makes a very uncouth sound.
Yeah.
But this car, the calibration seems to be pretty much spot on.
Other manufacturers go the other way. They sort of try and hang on to the taller gears for economy, but this is doing neither. I think it's actually really nicely tuned.
Yeah, so I think from a powertrain, ride handling and comfort perspective, this car pretty much does everything that you'd want it to do.
I can't quite put my finger on how exactly, but this car just, I find profoundly relaxing. There's just something about it that I get in and I don't really, maybe it's the level of comfort, like I've got lots of things to keep me warm and cool, it's got ventilated seats. I know I'm going to be very comfortable every time I get in this car, but it's also, you know, heading out in some terrible weather we had yesterday, I just felt very relaxed to just go somewhere. I knew this car was going to take me there. I wasn't going to have to work particularly hard to do it. Its size as well, also I don't get stressed out about having to maneuver in tight spaces or a lot of traffic. For me, there is a real sweetness to the size and the recipe in this car. It's just, I find it very relaxing, but I can't entirely explain why.
No, I get you 100%. And it's a reassuring car, you know, it's always going to have your back. I was driving up to Noosa, and it was when we were having those huge flooding events in northern New South Wales, and southeast Queensland, and I had the wiper on maximum of what felt like 3 days straight, torrential conditions, and the car didn't put a foot wrong, honestly.
And that's exactly what you want in a car like this, especially if you're going to load it up with people.
Yes.
And it's going to look after everyone, and I really do feel it would do that.
Yes, absolutely.
This is the all-wheel drive, as we said before, and all-wheel drive used to be one of those things that you'd only really associate with vehicles that were either high performance or you're going to go far away from the beaten trail. Not so anymore. They actually lend a bit of sure-footedness everywhere you go, and I have to say it's exactly the same with this car. You get that sense of extra traction everywhere you go. I really like the way this worked. It's sort of mild and benign, but it's noticeable at the same time.
It seems to be a bit of a Mazda trait, isn't it, that throughout their range, the all-wheel drive versions are the ones that are better to drive.
100%. CX-3 is case in point, and this seems to carry over exactly that. There's a bit of a weight penalty, but when you go for the more muscular diesel engine, you don't really feel it.
And it's more expensive, of course, but in this car's case, if you can, I would pay the extra for all-wheel drive over front-wheel drive. I'll admit to being a little cynical about this car. I thought it was a marketing exercise where Mazda was plugging a hole that didn't exist between the CX-5 and the CX-9, but having spent some time in it now, I do believe that this has a worthy place within the Mazda range. If you need 3 rows of seats, but you're going to live mostly in the city, then that narrow body on this car really does, it's a genuine benefit.
Definitely, but you haven't sacrificed all practicality. It's still big, still plenty of space for 2 or however many people you put behind the front row.
In saying that, I would not option the captain's chairs. I think this LE version appeals to quite a small market, and I'm certainly not one of them.
We're totally in agreement on that as well. I don't understand who's going to buy this particular variant. It's quite an expensive option over the standard Asaki. And who are you going to carry around? Do you really love your children that much? I know I don't love my children that much because I don't have any. That's how much I don't love them enough to have had them. So I'm not going to put them in really, really comfortable seats.
And it's not as though I'm going to jump in the back there and be chauffeured to a business meeting while I tap out notes on my laptop or something like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. And while I have been convinced that the CX-8 is a worthy addition to the Mazda Australia range, if I was given the choice between CX-8 and CX-9, I think I would still lean towards CX-9 because I like the way that it looks. That's a big thing for me. I much prefer the way the CX-9 looks over a CX-8. And if I'm not having to contend with really narrow alleyways or inner city urban living, I just prefer a CX-9 personally.
Well, that, Alex, is where you and I differ because I would have this over the CX-9 all day long.
Yeah, I would expect someone who wears a shirt like that to say such a thing. But,
that is absolutely controversial and completely right. Damn you, how dare you know me that well? Yes, obviously with this kind of attire, I care less of how a car looks on the outside when you're dealing with this kind of segment. For SUVs, I don't think any of them are particularly glamorous or wonderful, so I would prefer to go for the one which is easier to live with, a bit more manageable, but still tons more practicality than a CX-5.
Wow, that's strangely pragmatic of you, Dan.
Well, I'm full of surprises, Alex.
Are you maturing or aging?
No, God, I don't know.
So there we go, CX-8, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, it's absolutely a thumbs up.
Yeah, I think it's a thumbs up as well. I was erring, I was like a Julius Caesar at the gladiatorial games. But no, I've gone thumbs up.
So we're sparing this one from the lions.
We are, yes.